Hey everyone, it's Kirsten, and I'm finally getting around to my race report for the St. George 70.3 that went down on May 4th, 2019. So this was a really important race to me because I had a baby in June of 2018, and I knew that my first race back, I wanted it to be St. George because it is one of my very favorite races I've ever done. And I love it. I've done it as a full. I've done it almost every year as a half, and just has a special place in my heart. It's a special place for me. I love the energy. I love the people. I love my experiences there. I've trained a lot there, and I've raced a lot there. So I was really excited that this was going to be my first race back after having my baby. So I planned it that way. This is my A race, so I trained as best I could for it, and here's how it went. So I traveled with my baby and my mom, and it was my baby's first road trip, so that was really fun and really awesome, and thank God I had my mom there to help out. We drove, so she did great in the car. She did great on her road trip, and I stayed with my friends, Tad and Kristen, who I've been staying with for races and training in St. George since 2010, so that's always an amazing experience just to be with them. And I got there a couple days early, because I knew traveling would be a little longer than normal. I wanted to rest a little, which doesn't happen when you have a baby, so I was not well rested. But I was tapered for the race because, like I said, this was my A race for this whole year. So I've been training decently. I've been doing lots of short workouts and adding them up. So over the week, 20 minutes here, 15 minutes there, an hour here, 45 minutes there, have all added up to about 10 to 12 hours a week of training, which isn't what I'm used to, was used to. I usually train a lot of high volume, high mileage. So I wasn't really sure how I would do exactly, but I felt really confident in the run because I'd just done a really great half marathon on a really hilly course, the Horsetooth Half, and I felt decent on my swim, confident about my swim because I'm a swimmer and the swim is pretty easy for me. I wasn't as confident on about my bike going in because I have only been on my bike a handful of times, and my longest ride's only been 45 miles. But I get on the bike every chance I get, even if it's 10 minutes before a class I teach or 15 minutes here, 15 minutes there. So overall, I got a decent amount of time in the saddle, but it was usually on a bike at the gym or my trainer in my basement. So on Thursday, the race was Saturday. On Thursday, my friend Tad and I rode Snow Canyon, which is a pretty challenging part of the St. George course, and I felt really strong, so that gave me confidence going into the race that I would be okay on the bike. So I checked in on Thursday, I rode Snow Canyon and did a swim in the reservoir on Thursday, which was a little warmer than it has been in the past. I believe it was 62 degrees, so that was good news since I hadn't been in open water in a year and a half. My wetsuit fit. That's always a bonus after not being in it for 18 months. So that was great. So morning of the race, I wanted to keep our rental car at the house because it had the car seat with my mom and the baby, just in case something were to happen. So my friends actually dropped me off at the start, which I've never done that before. I always ride the bus from the finish. So it was nice because I got to sleep a little bit longer, and that's always a bonus because when you have a baby, you don't sleep enough as it is. So I got to sleep a little bit longer. I felt good. For breakfast, I've been making these 3-ingredient pancakes with oats and banana and almond milk. So I had those with peanut butter and Shakeology. I drank 2 shakes, I had 4 pancakes, and got to the start. I wasn't hungry. I drank some water. I drank some electrolytes. I drank some of my Beachbody Energize, and lined up. I went into line up pretty early because it was a rolling start, which I'm so happy they switched it. It used to be an age group start. And since I'm over 40, my age group was always toward the end. And so the rolling start helps me a lot more because I'm a good swimmer, so I can get out front, get on with the race earlier before the winds and the heat kick up. So I was super happy about the rolling start. I seated myself in there was a 25 to 30 minute section, so I seated myself there, and That's exactly what my time I got was 30 minutes. So the swim, a rolling start like that, they let 3 people go every 5 seconds. So it was never congested, never crowded. I never got hit. I don't even think I got touched the whole swim, which is pretty amazing for a event with 2,300 people. So if you're a nervous swimmer, if you're nervous about doing open water swim, you're not a strong swimmer, this is a perfect race to do for that, because 3 people go every 5 seconds. So you're pretty spread out right from the very beginning, and then you just spread out more from there. So the swim was really smooth. It got a little choppy the second half, but nothing outlandish, nothing crazy. So my swim time was exactly what I predicted, 30 minutes. Ran up to transition. It took me a while to get off my wetsuit because I'm not used to taking it off. And I couldn't get my helmet on. I was a little rusty on my transition, so I think my transition was a little longer than 2 years ago when I did the race. But went out on the bike. I felt comfortable. And St. George starts off on a climb, and then a little downhill, and then another climb. And then usually on this course, during those climbs, I feel pretty tired, but then I loosen up, after the first 10 miles or so. But I didn't even feel tired. I felt really good, and I wasn't pushing myself hard. I was going at a moderate pace. I always felt comfortable. I never felt out of breath. I never feel like, oh my God, this is so hard. And so I think that was really good for me on the bike. Usually I have a time goal, or I want to place or something like that. So I go out really hard on the bike, because the bike is actually my weakest event of the 3 typically. And so I get a little like, I gotta hurry or else I'm gonna be passed by 100 girls in my age group. And I didn't feel that way. I felt really relaxed, really calm on the bike. I got a little hungrier than normal, so I eat Pro Bar Bolt. They're little like square jelly things. So I actually had 2 bags of those on the bike, and then I drank my Energize. I mixed with, it's a product called Can't Beat This. It's beet powder. I mixed those, and I drank those. So I drink every 10 minutes or so. I'll have a couple drinks, and then I ate my 2 packages of the Bolt, one at about an hour and one at about 2 hours. So I don't wear a watch when I race, so I kind of estimate by the miles. So the bike felt really good, and I didn't know what time it was. Because like I said, I don't wear a watch, but I can see the clocks, and I knew I started toward the beginning, because it had only been a few minutes after the start when I went on my swim. So I kind of had an idea that my swim plus my bike was 3:30, and so I knew if I could keep about a 2-hour marathon, I would get 5:30, and my goal was actually to get under 5:30. So I left transition on the bike, which was a speedier transition than my first one. Feeling pretty confident and pretty excited for the run. So the run is really, really hard in St. George. If you haven't done the run, I feel like the bike is everyone's always like, oh, the bike. I feel like the bike is much easier than the run at that race. Plus it starts getting hot toward the run, and it's just, the first 2.5, 3 miles is, the first 2 miles is a gradual climb. Then it gets steep for about a mile or so. And then it's kind of rolling. It's a little M shape, so you go like out, then halfway back, then out, then all the way back. So the good news is the last 3 miles are downhill, and I knew that. So I knew if I could get to mile 10, I would be great. So I had a bottle of my Energize and Can't Beat This as I went out on the run. So I drank that every mile. I took a couple sips. I took some electrolytes, capsules, which I haven't eaten in like a year and a half. So they kind of upset my stomach a little. Not too bad. It wasn't like I had to stop or anything, but I could feel it. And then I was hungry again, so I ate 1 more package of the Bolt. But by mile 4 or 5, I was really needing to take in some extra stuff, because I'd finished all my stuff, and I was getting a little crampy and tight. So I started drinking some Gatorade and cola and some other stuff at the aid stations. So but I never really was like, this is hurting, this is killing me. I was going at a moderate to hard pace, effort, because I wanted to be able to make it to the end. That was my goal, and I knew if I could get a 2-hour marathon, I would make my goal. So I was feeling really good about that. I am pretty competitive, so if I would see somebody ahead of me, it would motivate me to go a little faster. I did walk a little on the last uphill, which, if you've been to that course on St. George, you know which hill I'm talking about, and a lot of people walk it. And then, so the last 3 miles are downhill. So I was like, if I could just make it to mile 10, I'm good to go. And I had taken some more electrolyte, salt tablets, and drinking some Gatorade and cola. And I was feeling pretty energetic. So I got to mile 10 and I was like, you know what? I'm opening it up. I'm just going to like blaze the last 3 miles. But as soon as I started running, like trying to open up my stride, my hamstrings got really tight, almost crampy, and I didn't want to risk not being able to finish because my hamstrings cramped up. So I just kept my stride short. I just kept it at that moderate intensity. Again, I wasn't wearing a watch, but I knew how I felt that I would be under 2 hours on the run if I just made it. So don't do anything stupid and try to sprint to the finish when your hamstrings are getting really tight and crampy. So I made it to the finish. I ended up, my time was 5:15. So my bike was, my swim was 30, my bike was 148, right? I'm pro. 248, which was amazing because that was my fastest St. George bike time. It had to do with the conditions. I think there was, when I was riding, there was hardly any wind. It was cooler temperatures, between 60 at the start, 75 at the finish. Perfect conditions. Out of all the times I've done St. George, they were definitely the best conditions that I've been in. And then my run was 150. So all in all, a 5:15, which was only 2 minutes slower than my time 2 years ago. So I was beyond ecstatic. I just felt like everything went perfectly. Everything went exactly how I had planned it. And yeah, so it's an amazing race. Next year there's gonna be a full, so I am planning on being there for that. I am going to make that happen. Not sure how yet. Trying to cook up some plans, but I will be there. I love that course. I've done the full before. Oh, when I did the full, I was in the worst shape ever. Not ever. Oh, yeah, for me, probably one of the worst shapes ever. Barely finished. Had to get off the bike and walk. I walked my bike up the hill. Anyway, it was a rough day. So I know that next year I'm gonna definitely PR that race. So I would love to see you out there. If you guys have any questions about the St. George race or the St. George area, I've been there so many times. I love that race. I would love to answer questions. It is a very hard race, but it's beautiful. It's gorgeous. The energy in St. George is amazing. The people are wonderful. And I think it's definitely a race for everyone to put on your bucket list. So if you have any questions, let me know. And I hope to see you in St. George sometime. All right. Thanks. Bye.